You're listening to English as a Second Language podcast's English Cafe, number 22. This is episode 22 of the English Cafe. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff McQuillan, coming to you from the Center for Educational Development in beautiful Los Angeles, California. On today's cafe, we'll go over some more interjections, an addition to our comments about the state of Minnesota, and lots of questions. Let's get started. On the last cafe, I talked about the state of Minnesota, my home state where I was born, and I listed some of the famous people from Minnesota, but Augustine in Spain emailed me and said I should have mentioned the famous singer from Minnesota, and that person's name is Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was born and raised in northern Minnesota, and I should have mentioned him as a famous Minnesotan, more famous than the vice presidents, I think. So thank you, Augustine, for that reminder. Well, last time I also spoke about interjections. Those are those little words that express some sort of strong emotion. Things like man or geez. Well, I thought I would go over a couple more of these interjections that we use in English. One that is very common is uh-oh, spelled O-H-O-H. Uh-oh. When something goes wrong, when someone makes a mistake, you may go, uh-oh, it's a sign of something bad has happened. Ouch, O-U-C-H, ouch, is when you hurt yourself. You may cut yourself or hit your hand against the table accidentally and you hurt. We would say ouch. Whew. W-H-E-W, which we would pronounce, I guess, as whew or whew. That sound is when you are relieved, when something bad was going to happen but it doesn't happen, or that you thought you were going to have bad news and it's not bad news. That sign of relief is when we would use that expression, whew, whew, or whew. Different pronunciations of that, I guess. A couple more here. A expression spelled B-R-R, which we would pronounce as burr. Burr is when you're cold. And when you're very cold, you would say burr. And finally, my favorite, do, which is spelled D''OH. This actually comes in part from The Simpsons, the television program, the cartoon, The Simpsons. And do is something you say usually when you do something stupid, when you do something wrong, and it indicates that you were wrong and you did something or said something that was not very smart, not very intelligent. Well, we have lots of questions today, so let's answer some. Our first question comes from Greg in Poland. Greg wants to know the difference between in and into. When do you use in and when do you use into? Well, normally into, when we are talking about a person doing something into, is when you are, for example, going into a contained space, such as I walked into the house. You're going into a specific place. It's possible to say I'm going in the house, but into is something we would use for a room or a house or a building. I'm going into the kitchen is how we would use that, rather than I'm going in the kitchen. Although it is possible to say I'm going in the kitchen. If you're talking about someone's location, where they are, you use in, not into. So, where is John? He is in the kitchen. He walks into the kitchen, but he is in the kitchen. So, into here has a sense also of going into something, whereas in, they're already there. There are other uses of into. Into also can mean interested in. He's into classical music, means he is interested in classical music. Rafael in Venezuela wants to know about how we use the word indeed. I-N-D-E-E-D. Indeed. Well, there are again a couple of uses for indeed. One is the idea that something is really or truly or actually. For example, he is indeed here, means he is really here. He is actually here. He is truly here. Another use of indeed would be when you are agreeing with someone. This is sort of a slightly old-fashioned use. And someone says, it's very cold out. And to agree with that person, you say, indeed, it is. So that's another possible use of indeed. We also use indeed at the beginning of a sentence when we are going to give more information about a topic, similar to the expression in fact. For example, it is very cold outside. Indeed, it is freezing. So we give some additional information that confirms or provides more evidence for our previous sentence. Ali in China, moving to the other side of the world, wants to know about the expression that he read on a website, mail-in rebate. Mail, M-A-I-L, hyphen in, rebate, R-E-B-A-T-E. Let's start with rebate. A rebate is when a company gives you money back after you buy something. So you will often see in the store, if you buy this new television, you'll get a $100 rebate. So you buy the television. Usually you have to send in your receipt to the company, and the company will send you your money. That is a rebate, where you get some money back from your purchase. Mail in means that you have to send it in the mail. So you have to send your receipt, what we would call your proof of purchase, your proof, P-R-O-O-F, of purchase, meaning something that shows that you bought this thing. you have to mail that in or mail it to the company. So a mail-in rebate is money that you get back when you buy something and you send your receipt into the company. Of course, the company has to be offering a rebate. Most things don't have a rebate, but it's one way that companies sell things, get people to buy things. Going back over to Europe now, Sylvia in Madrid, in Spain, wants to know about the difference between on time, O-N-T-I-M-E, 2 words, and in time. On time means that you are on schedule. You are arriving at a place at the time you said you were going to be there. Or something is arriving. For example, the train is supposed to arrive at the station, the train station, at 7 o'clock. If it arrives on time, it arrives at 7 o'clock. So it comes at the time it's supposed to. You expect it to come. In time is when you have a deadline. You have a certain limit of time, and you need something done before that limit. For example, you need to give your boss a report by 5 o'clock this afternoon. If you give it to him at 4:30, you gave it to him in time, before the deadline, before when you had to, or not later than. If you give it to him at 5:30, you did not give it to him in time, because it was after the time you were supposed to give it to your boss. So that's the difference between on time and in time. Moving back now over to Asia, Akira in Japan wants to know about the verb administer, manage, and administrate. What is the difference between these 3 verbs? Well, they all have similar meanings. They all mean that talk about a person who is taking care of or is in charge of, is the leader or the boss of something, and is the person who is responsible for something. The differences aren't really in the actual meaning. I think the biggest difference here would be in when you would use, in what circumstances, or talking about what sort of business. To administer usually has to do with a large program. He administers the Department of Transportation for the government. To manage is usually a smaller group or smaller organization. You can have many people who manage different parts of a company, and we probably wouldn't use the verb administer, for example, for someone who has 10 people working for them, and they are the manager. That person manages those 10 people. To administrate means the same as to administer. It's not a very common use, however. We don't use administrate as a verb very often. As a noun, we have administrator or administrator, and that is a person who administrates or administers. And we also have administration, and administration can mean a couple of things. One means the organization of the people who are managing or administering a group. So these 3 verbs, administer, manage, and administrate, are all related usually to organizations and businesses. So thank you, Akira, for that question. Well, that's all we have time for on today's Cafe. As always, we ask you to visit our website for more information at eslpod.com. From Los Angeles, I'm Jeff McQuillan. We'll see you next time on the English Cafe. ESL Podcast English Cafe is written and produced by Dr. Jeff McQuillan. This podcast is copyright 2006 by the Center for Educational Development.